Dave listens to Hi-Fi. Dave listens to Hi-Fi.
Hello, bienvenue. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in to Dave Listens to Hi-Fi. So today I want to talk about an integrated amplifier. That is the Rega Brio-R. This review is sponsored by my bro Steve. This amplifier actually belongs to him. He's generously lent it to me to listen to and give my opinion. He has replaced it with another newer amplifier, so he's not without an amp for a while, but I did have the pleasure of using it and listening to it, and I will give you my opinions and rundown of all the features and benefits of this amplifier. So the Rega Brio-R is an integrated amplifier. It's 50 watts per channel, made in England. It's, as far as I can figure, it's about the 5th generation of the Rega Brio amplifier line. They've been producing it for quite a while. This one's about circa 2011. The R is for remote. So it comes with a little remote, a couple controls on there that don't control anything on the amplifier because I think it's a universal remote also for their DACs and CD players and stuff. So it does control volume and channel selection. Channel selection is done by, there's a single button on the front. There's a single button to turn it on. When you turn it on, the Rega logo glows red, very nice. Very understated, doesn't shine in your face like a blue LED would. The channel selection is done with a single button, like I said, and it's sequential. So you press it and then it goes to the next, and then at the end it goes back to the start. Input 1 is a phono stage, moving magnet phono stage. As far as I can tell, there are no adjustments. It's a fixed level. Then for single-ended RCA inputs, motorized pot controlled by the volume knob. So it's pretty heavy for its size. It's not a really heavy amplifier, but because it is a kind of a half-width unit, it's actually fairly heavy for its size. If you weigh it, it will weigh about the same as a stack of Absolute Sound magazines and a big old pipe wrench. In terms of size, the Rega Brio-R we're looking at here is about 8.5 inches wide, so it's pretty much half size, half of a standard component, about 3 inches tall and about 12 inches deep. If you look at the build quality, it looks fairly nice, but you can tell by the materials used. The back panel, when you plug things in, you plug in a heavier power cord, you can see how the back panel is flexing. Also the front panel is a little susceptible to scratches if you clean it quite a bit. So some care must be taken because it is just a soft acrylic. The steel outside chassis, top and sides, seems pretty resilient, nice paint on there, and easy to keep clean. If you crack open the top, you're going to find the top steel cover is quite thick, and it's actually plugged in with a spade connector to ground it. So that's a nice little attention to detail. Open it up, you're going to see a big toroid transformer, a couple of smoothing caps. You can see the top of the capacitor is actually labeled, nice little Easter egg on the circuit board there. In the back, you're going to see the relays for the switching, because that's done with single button control. It switches through the inputs with relays and some other circuit boards, some nice quality components, decent wiring. It's built with care. Very compact. Everything's fit in there quite tightly, so it can fit that size. But it is fairly well made, and my brother's been using it for years with no issues at all. So in terms of reliability, it doesn't get overly hot. In terms of electrical efficiency, when you plug the Rega in, it consumes just about 20 watts at idle. So it's fairly efficient. It doesn't get overly warm, so you can keep it in a closed cabinet or something. It's not going to overheat too much. Under loud volumes, pushing it quite hard into my 87 dB speakers, the consumption would go up well over 100 watts, if you're using that many watts. But at idle, it's only consuming about 20 watts, so you can leave it in. Leave it plugged in, turned on, and it's not going to break the bank in terms of electrical consumption or wasted heat. So the good stuff. What does it sound like? One of the first albums that I used when I was auditioning the Rega was this Paul Simon. This is 7 Psalms. Paul Simon was pretty much done. I mean, he's in his 80s now, and he was pretty much done making music. But in 2019, he woke up from a dream, and he had these lyrics in his head, and he had this dream that he was composing this piece. And over subsequent nights, he would wake up 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning and write down the lyrics that came to him in this dream. And then over the next year or two, he composed the rest of the album, recorded it, and that is this work. This is 7 Psalms. Pretty much an acoustic album, singing Paul Simon, his wife Edie Brickell, and guitars and some other sparse instrumentation. So what did it sound like on the Rega Brio-R? The voice was very nice. Paul Simon's voice was a little chesty. I found the details were a bit lacking. It was a bit confused sounding. It wasn't as precise and detailed as some other really good Class D amps or my Class A reference. But very decent. The top end was a little bit electronic, not quite fine sounding. That's pretty much the biggest complaint I had.
It was at this point that the batteries in my microphone died, and I have no audio for the rest of this footage, so let me just fill in what I was saying. It wasn't a dark sound, it was just a bit kind of electronic and not as detailed on the top end compared to the rest of my reference components. The soundstage was a bit narrow compared to my reference. The image was a little bit distant, but very clear and quiet. It was a very quiet presentation as well. The tone is great. You could hear Edie Brickell's voice in the mix. You could recognize her voice instantly, and so I think that speaks to the detail that is on tap here. Especially through the mid-range, maybe not in the high end, but there was enough mid-range detail that you could easily pick out the specific voice of Edie Brickell as she came into the mix, and you would know exactly who it is, having recognized her the sound of her voice.
And so because I enjoyed listening to the vocals so much on the Paul Simon thing, I pulled out this record, The Highwomen. So this is a country supergroup. This is their debut album, and it's full of vocals, full of country tunes, and it was very powerful sounding and a nice separation of the vocals with all the vocal parts, all the women singing. You could really pick up details like spring reverbs and tambourines hidden deep down in the mix. Everything was nicely layered, really good soundstage depth on this record. The soundstage was a bit cone-shaped, so it didn't have the full width at the back reaches of the soundstage, but still it had nice layering, and because it was a little bit distant sounding, it didn't present things in your face. It was a little bit laid back, but still a big nice depth behind there. Vocals were very like I said, the vocals were detailed. It was a very full sounding album, and that came through with the Rega. I mean, if there's anything that you can say about the Rega, it's not a thin amplifier. It's not overly warm and syrupy, but it does have a fullness to it that really makes it satisfying to listen to when you have some good, well-recorded music. Now, I wanted to hear something a little more synthetic, having listened to a lot of vocals previously. So I put on this one. This is Tortoise, Millions Now Living Will Never Die. The track was The Taut and Tame. Now this track has a lot of really cool guitar sounds and percussion, and all those details came through really nicely. It wasn't as visceral sounding as with my reference. There was lots of harmonics, very full sounding, nice and layered, and the timing was very good. Just if I could give any little criticism, it would be that the performance didn't seem as energetic as with my reference. Seemed a bit toned down, like the players were a bit tired, sort of thing. Not a huge part, but kind of reaching for the for the description of it, but that was the feeling I got after listening, A/Bing it with my reference amplifiers. The Rega it's an interesting thing because a lot of times you listen to an amplifier and you have a good sense of what it sounds like, and it's more or less easy to describe. It's quick or dark sounding, or it's bright or flat, or I've heard a lot of amplifiers, and I find it easy most of the time to describe what they sound like. And this Rega I was listening to for a very long time, a couple months actually, and I was really having trouble getting a good sense of its character. It seems pretty neutral. It's not clean like a straight wire with gain. It does have character. It does have a power and a warmth and an energy to it. But in terms of encapsulating the character of the amplifier itself, I found it quite hard to describe. I picked out these albums that I kind of gravitated towards. I enjoyed listening to with the Rega. It proved quite difficult to give a good description of what the amplifier was, because you put it in and it just sounded great with most things. On the one hand, it's tough to review, but on the other hand, it's easy to listen to. So there you go. So, failing to really get a good sense of what the amplifier sounded like, I started to play around with it and stream. I played some CDs, played My Morning Jacket. I was using it to listen to a bunch of different power cables, interconnects, and speaker cables, just to see if there was enough resolution with the amplifier to pick up on the differences, because often cables can be very subtle differences if you hear them at all. It does take a certain amount of resolution and a certain system to be able to pick up on the differences. And so I tried it with the Rega, just to, a different way of testing it, because I was having trouble giving its character in terms of sound. It was good enough to pick up the differences in power cables. I first tried a regular standard 14 gauge power cable, and then I stepped up to a DH Labs, and I have a special one that I bought, didn't pay much for. But they all, you could tell the difference. They're a little bit, soundstage grew a little bit, sounded a little quicker. Very subtle differences on the power cables, but you could pick it up. Interconnects, you could tell the difference between the interconnects, between Morrow and some of my other ones. Subtle little differences. Speaker cables, I have a pair of the Steve Huff recommended Amazon speaker cables. I bought long ones because I needed to put the integrated up here. Normally my power amp sits in between the speakers, so I have shorter speaker cables. So I had to buy a set of longer ones so I could really plug everything in back there. And switching between those and my old set of DIY cables, and you could pick up the difference between the speaker cables fairly easily. So there is enough resolution that if you're doing some tweaks with cables and stuff, you're going to be able to notice it using the Rega. And finally, I tried some streaming music. I have Bjork, the track Not Get. This is a track that I like to test with. It's a very interesting little dissonant sounding. It's a bit tough to listen to, but I love her vocals in it. It sounds like chanting, almost like in a church when they're reciting the Psalms. How it's a simple melody repeated, and that's kind of the feeling I get when she's singing the vocals in this. Plus, very interesting layers of sound, and then string sections that come in, and then synthesized sounds, and then there's a very deep sub bass that comes through. And I'll just read you my notes here. Compared to my reference, this kind of fell flat. The airiness and detail of the environment that the strings live in were a bit lost. Her voice also lost the realism. The bass, however, was mostly there in a very satisfying weight and detail. So the bass is particularly impressive on this amp. It is very powerful and fairly detailed too. Wasn't the last degree of grip. Didn't have that same solidity at higher volumes on the low end. I mean, it is just a 50 watt per channel integrated, so you're not gonna have a lot with it, but compared to some big weighty power amplifiers I've listened to, it really holds its own. It's quite impressive. I mean, you open it up, there's just the single toroid and then just two, I think 10,000 microfarad caps. So it's not overly spec'd or anything, but it does the job. It absolutely does the job. Amplifier and speaker matching is very important. I mean, this to me is the most critical element in building a system. I've mentioned it before, and I think when you're starting from scratch, if you were just starting from zero base point and you wanted to build a hi-fi system, to me the way it's done, you pick a set of speakers that you like the sound of and you like the look of, because you're going to be staring at them all the time when you're listening to music. They're right in your face. Pick speakers you like, pick speakers you want, and pick speakers you like the sound of. Find an amplifier that drives those speakers well, and then you can work on your source and all the other elements of it. But that speaker amplifier matching is critical. So I have three main sets of speakers of varying efficiencies that I try. My main speakers are Carver Amazings. They're about 87, 86 dB efficient. And then I have a set of Triangle Comet E, about 92 dB efficiency. And then I have a set of Noresco speakers with German isophone drivers in them. It's a kind of a coax driver just with a single capacitor, and those are very high efficiency, up around the 97 dB. So it's fun to play the three speakers and see how an amplifier matches with them. It actually drove my Carvers very well. Could get to some reasonable volumes. It did fall apart once you really started to push it high, but like I said, that it is 50 watts amplifier, so within that power, it's going to do great. But if you're asking a lot more of it, it just doesn't have it there. The Triangles actually produce a very nice sound stage, very nice tone with them. The Norescos, the high efficiency speakers, not so much. So if you have a set of really high efficiency Klipsch or Zoos or something, something that has a lot of punch, this may not be the best match for that. But anything lower efficiency, Dion Audios or something that takes a bit of power, stand mounts like the Super Tablets or something, those will probably be a good match with this. My brother used them with Harbeths for a long time, and he seemed to like the pairing as well. So something like that is going to do good. Any of the LS35, those speakers, lower efficiency, this amplifier is going to be a great match, I would suspect. So I know I'm going to get some comments. Why are you reviewing this amplifier? It's like 10, 15 years old. It's not a new amp. What's the point of the review? Well, I mean, I buy most of my stuff used, and I found it was hard to find reviews of older stuff. So that's why I like to do this stuff as I can, if it's possible. This amplifier was available to me, so I thought it was fun to take it for a while and give you an idea of how much how it sounds for the price. In terms of buying one, I mean, it's possible. I can go on eBay. There's $319 US. I saw it on Hi-Fi Shark for around 400 euros. Canadian Kijiji, I can find one for about $600. And if you wanted to buy that one, I'm sure my brother would part for it for a reasonable sum if you want to hit him up. But there are these amplifiers available for sale. You can get one in any number of places. So it's a viable product. In terms of its value for that money, I mean, certainly it's reliable. This thing's been going for many years. It worked flawlessly over the several months that I played with it. It held up physically, plugging and unplugging cables, no problem. The sound was very satisfying. The sound was full and rich and detailed. Like I said, sound stage wasn't top of the line. The top end did sound a little electronic, but for anything comparison, anything in this price range, it's going to be a very, very good competition. Certainly, if you buy it, you're going to have a known quality. You're going to have something presumably very reliable. You're going to have something that sounds great, detailed. You're going to have something that's going to be able to drive a lot of speakers. If you have less efficient speakers, I think this would be a great option. High efficient speakers, you're probably looking at a tube amp anyway, something a little bit in a different direction than the Rega Brio-R, but you know, comes with a remote, has a phono stage, no DAC, but you know, at this price you can find a number of DACs that'll pair nicely with it as well. So that's my review of the Rega Brio-R. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it was entertaining. I appreciate all your subscriptions. Please subscribe if you like what I do. If you like my channel, give me a like. It helps the algorithms to push my channel to the forefront. I'm not making any money doing this. Like I said, this is just an amp I borrowed from my brother. No one's sending me money or giving me any free equipment. This is just my pure and honest opinion of what I think it sounds like. So I hope it's helpful. Like, subscribe, and keep watching. Thanks a lot for your support. I'll talk to you later.